Admiral Jake Harrison stood on the bridge of the starship Unity and watched the stars change from white points to long streaks as they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The view screen showed a massive space station hanging in the darkness, like a metal city. This was Nexus Prime, and Jake had never seen anything like it before. The station was huge, maybe 50 times bigger than anything humans had ever built. Strange ships of different shapes and sizes moved around it like insects around a bright light. Some ships looked like they were made of glass, others seemed to be alive and breathing, and a few appeared to be solid blocks of dark metal that somehow flew through space. Jake turned to look at his crew. Captain Lisa Morgan stood beside him, her face calm but her eyes showing the worry they all felt. She was humanity's best diplomat, the person Earth had chosen to speak for all humans in this first meeting with alien races. Behind her stood Commander Gary Webb, the ship's tactical officer, and Dr. Helen Park, Earth's top scientist who studied alien cultures. 3 weeks ago, Earth had received a message that changed everything. The message came from something called the Galactic Council, a group of alien races that controlled most of the galaxy. The message was simple but scary. Come to Nexus Prime for a meeting or face the consequences. Humans had only just learned how to travel faster than light 5 years ago. They had built a few small bases on Mars and the Moon and sent ships to explore nearby star systems. They thought they were alone in the universe until the message arrived. Now they knew they were very wrong. The communication system buzzed with an incoming signal. A voice spoke in perfect English, though it sounded cold and mechanical. Human vessel Unity, you are cleared to dock at Base 7. A delegation will meet you there. Jake nodded to his pilot. Take us in slowly. Keep all weapons powered down, but ready. As the Unity moved closer to the station, Jake could see more details. The station was not just big, it was beautiful in a strange way. Parts of it seemed to grow like a plant, while other sections looked like they had been carved from a single piece of crystal. Lights of different colors moved through tubes that connected the various parts. How many different races do you think built this? Dr. Park asked, her voice full of wonder. The message mentioned 3 main members of the council, Lisa said. The Zephyrians, the Corvan Empire, and something called the Ethereal Collective. The Unity settled into the docking bay with a soft thud. Through the windows they could see the bay was filled with a breathable atmosphere. Strange machines moved around, connecting power and airlines to their ship. Everything happened automatically, without any visible workers. Jake checked his sidearm one more time, though he knew it would probably be useless against alien technology. Remember, we are here to listen and learn. Do not make any promises or threats. We speak for all of humanity today. The airlock opened with a hiss, and the human delegation stepped onto the station. The gravity felt normal, but the air smelled different, like metal and ozone. The walls around them pulsed with soft blue light, and Jake could feel a vibration through the floor, as if the station was alive. 3 figures waited for them in the docking bay. The first looked almost human but was much taller, with pale blue skin and large black eyes. Its movements were precise and calculated like a machine. The second figure wore heavy armor that covered its entire body, and Jake could hear mechanical breathing coming from inside the helmet. The third figure was the strangest of all, appearing to be made of shifting light and energy, barely solid enough to see. The blue-skinned alien stepped forward and spoke. I am Advisor Kree of the Zephyrian Republic. This is Commander Thane of the Corvan Empire and Essence Flux of the Ethereal Collective. You will follow us to the council chamber. Lisa stepped forward. I am Captain Lisa Morgan, representing the people of Earth. We are honored to meet you. Advisor Kree's expression did not change. Honor is not required, only compliance. They walked through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The walls showed images of different worlds, strange cities, and alien creatures Jake could not even imagine. Other beings moved through the halls, some walking on two legs like humans, others floating or crawling or moving in ways that made no sense. "How long has the council existed?" Dr. Park asked. 12,000 of your years, Commander Thane replied, his voice coming through speakers in his armor. "We have brought order to this galaxy. Peace through strength. Peace through understanding." The energy being added, its voice sounding like wind chimes. "We guide young races toward wisdom." Jake noticed that none of the aliens seemed impressed by humans. They looked at the human delegation the way humans might look at children playing with toys. It made him uncomfortable, but he kept his face calm. Finally, they reached a massive chamber with a dome ceiling that showed the stars outside. 3 sections of seats rose up from the floor, each filled with members of the different races. In the center was a platform where the human delegation was directed to stand. A figure descended from the highest seat. It was taller than Advisor Kree, with skin that seemed to be made of living metal. When it spoke, its voice filled the entire chamber. "I am Council Leader Vex of the Zephyrian Republic. Humans of Earth, you have been brought here to receive judgment." The chamber fell silent. Jake felt his heart beating faster, but he stood straight and looked directly at Council Leader Vex. Whatever came next, humanity would face it with dignity. Council Leader Vex raised one metallic hand, and images appeared in the air above the platform where the human delegation stood. The images showed Earth from space, then zoomed in to show human cities, factories, and military bases. Jake watched, his homeworld being displayed like evidence in a trial. "For 47 of your years, we have observed your species," Vex continued. "We have watched you develop nuclear weapons, explore your solar system, and recently achieve faster than light travel. Your expansion rate is concerning." Lisa stepped forward. "We have only explored a few nearby star systems. We have not claimed any territory or threatened anyone yet," Commander Thane said from his seat. "All young races say this. Then they grow stronger and more aggressive. We have seen it many times before." The energy being called Essence Flux spoke next. "Your species shows troubling patterns. You fight wars among yourselves even as you reach for the stars. You consume resources without regard for balance. You multiply quickly and spread across worlds like an infection." Jake felt anger rising in his chest but forced himself to stay calm. These aliens were talking about humanity like they were some kind of disease. "What exactly are you proposing?" Dr. Park asked. Council Leader Vex's metal face showed no emotion. "The Galactic Council offers humanity 2 choices. You may submit to our guidance and accept limits on your expansion and technology. We will assign overseers to your worlds to ensure you develop in a safe and controlled manner." "And a second choice?" Lisa asked, though Jake could tell she already knew the answer. "Elimination," Commander Thane said simply. "Your species will be removed as a threat to galactic peace." The chamber was silent for a long moment. Jake looked at the hundreds of alien faces staring down at them. Some looked curious, others bored, and a few seemed almost hungry for violence. "How long do we have to decide?" Lisa asked. 7 standard days, Vex replied. "Return to your world and consult with your leaders. When you return, you will give us your answer." Advisor Kree gestured toward the exit. "Your ship will be escorted back to the edge of your system. Do not attempt to contact other species or seek alliance. Any such attempt will be considered an act of war." The walk back to the Unity felt longer than before. Jake noticed that their alien escorts had been joined by armed guards, creatures in dark armor that moved like predators. The message was clear. Humanity was not trusted. Once back aboard their ship, Jake waited until they were clear of the station before speaking. "Get me a secure channel to Earth. Priority Alpha." The trip home took 2 days. Jake spent most of that time in his quarters thinking about what he had seen. The aliens were not evil, exactly, but they were cold and completely sure of their own superiority. They treated younger races the way humans might treat wild animals that needed to be controlled. When the Unity reached Earth orbit, shuttles were already waiting to take the delegation down to the emergency session that had been called. President Alex Rodriguez met them at the landing pad, his face grim. "The whole world is watching," he said as they climbed into the secure transport. "Every news channel, every government, every person on Earth wants to know what happened out there." The Global Defense Council meeting was held in a bunker deep beneath the United Nations building in New York. The room was filled with representatives from every major nation, military leaders, and scientists. Jake had never seen so many important people in one place. Lisa gave her report first, describing the meeting and the ultimatum. When she finished, the room erupted in angry voices. General Peter Collins of the United States military stood up and slammed his hand on the table. "We will not bow to alien threats," he declared. "Humanity has never surrendered to tyrants, and we will not start now." Dr. Susan Wright, Earth's leading expert on xenobiology, stood up next. "General, with respect, you are thinking like this is a war between human nations. These aliens have technology thousands of years ahead of ours. Their smallest ships could probably destroy our entire fleet. Then what do you suggest?" President Rodriguez asked. "That we simply give up our freedom?" "I suggest we think differently," Dr. Wright replied. She activated a holographic display that showed data about the 3 alien races. "My team has been studying everything we know about these species. We found something interesting." The display showed images of alien worlds, their histories, and their development over time. Jake leaned forward, trying to understand what Dr. Wright was showing them. "Each of these races has evolved far beyond what we would consider normal," she continued. "The Zephyrians have replaced most of their emotions with logic and calculation. The Corvan Empire has bred itself into a rigid military hierarchy where individual thinking is discouraged. The Ethereals have become so focused on spiritual advancement that they barely interact with the physical world anymore." "What does that mean for us?" Admiral Harrison asked. Dr. Wright smiled. "It means they have forgotten something that humans still remember. They have optimized themselves for efficiency, but they have lost the very things that make survival possible in truly desperate situations." Captain Danny Foster, a veteran of Earth's last major war, stood up slowly. He was an older man with scars on his face and hands that told stories of hard fighting. "Dr. Wright is right. I have seen what happens when military forces become too focused on perfection and efficiency. They become brittle. When things go wrong, they break. Are you suggesting we fight them?" General Collins asked. "No," Danny replied. "I am suggesting we show them something they have never seen before, something they cannot understand or predict because they have evolved beyond it." President Rodriguez looked around the room at all the faces staring back at him. "What exactly are you proposing?" Dr. Wright and Captain Foster exchanged glances. "We think humanity's greatest weakness might actually be our greatest strength," Wright said. "These aliens see us as primitive and chaotic. What if that is exactly what we need to be?" The discussion continued for hours. Plans were made and discarded. Strategies debated and rejected. But slowly, an idea began to form. It was crazy and dangerous and unlike anything that had ever been tried before. But it might just work. Jake looked around the room at the determined faces of Earth's leaders. 7 days ago, humanity had been alone in the universe. Now they faced a choice that would determine the future of their entire species. Whatever they decided, Jake knew one thing for certain: humanity would not go quietly into the darkness. The Unity approached Nexus Prime for the second time, but this trip felt different. Jake stood on the bridge watching the massive station grow larger on the view screen, and he could feel the tension in his crew. Everyone knew that what happened in the next few hours would change everything for humanity. Dr. Wright sat at one of the science stations, reviewing her data one more time. Captain Foster checked his equipment, though he would not need weapons. For what they planned to do, Lisa stood beside Jake, her face calm but her hands clasped tightly behind her back. "Remember," Jake said quietly, "no matter how they react, we stick to the plan." The docking procedure was the same as before, but this time Jake noticed more ships around the station. Word had spread through the galaxy that a new species was being judged, and other races had come to watch. Some of the ships were so strange that Jake could not even guess how they worked. Advisor Cree met them at the airlock again, along with the same escorts as before. But Jake noticed something different in the aliens' large black eyes. There was curiosity there, and maybe a little surprise. "The Council is eager to hear humanity's decision," Cree said as they walked through the corridors. "Most species require less than 1 day to choose submission. Your extended deliberation is unusual." Lisa nodded politely, but said nothing. They had agreed to reveal nothing until they reached the council chamber. The great dome was even more crowded than before. Jake counted at least a dozen different alien races in the viewing areas, all watching as the human delegation took their place on the central platform. Council Leader Vex descended from his seat, his metallic skin reflecting the lights from above. "Humans of Earth," Vex announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You have had 7 days to consider our offer. What is your decision?" Lisa stepped forward. Jake could see that every being in the chamber was focused on her, waiting to hear humanity surrender like so many species before them. "Council Leader Vex, honorable members of the Galactic Council," Lisa began, her voice clear and strong. "Humanity has made its decision." The chamber fell silent. Even the background hum of the station's machinery seemed to quiet down. "We reject both of your options," Lisa continued. "We will not submit to oversight, and we will not be eliminated. Instead, we propose a third choice." A murmur ran through the chamber. Several aliens leaned forward in their seats. Council Leader Vex's expression did not change, but Jake noticed his hands clenched slightly. "Explain," Vex commanded. "We challenge the Council to a contest," Lisa said. "If humanity loses, we will accept your guidance willingly. If we win, humanity maintains its independence and gains a seat on this council as an equal member." The murmur became a roar of alien voices. Some sounded amused, others angry, and a few seemed shocked. Commander Thane rose from his seat, his armored form towering over the chamber. "No species has ever made such a demand," Thane declared. "You are insects proposing to challenge giants." Essence Flux spoke next, its voice like musical chimes. "Arrogance, born of ignorance. This is why young races must be guided or removed." But Council Leader Vex raised his hand for silence. "What manner of contest do you propose, humans? A display of military might? A test of technological advancement? You must know you cannot match us in these areas." Lisa smiled, and Jake felt a surge of pride in his diplomat. "Nothing so predictable, Council Leader. We propose a survival challenge." The chamber erupted again. Jake heard what sounded like laughter from several different alien species, though he could not be sure since he had never heard aliens laugh before. "Survival?" Advisor Cree asked. "Your species wishes to compete in survival?" 3 representatives from each council member race plus 3 humans, Lisa explained. We will be placed on an uninhabited world with minimal supplies. The group that survives longest wins. Commander Thane stood up again, and this time Jake could hear actual laughter coming from his suit speakers. The Corvan Empire has conquered 17 star systems. Our warriors are bred for combat and trained from birth for war. You propose to match our survival skills? Your terms are acceptable, Essence Flux added, its form shifting with what might have been amusement. We have transcended the need for physical sustenance. This contest is meaningless. But Jake noticed that Council Leader Vex was not laughing. The metallic alien studied the human delegation with those cold, calculating eyes. Why would you propose a contest you cannot win? Vex asked, Who says we cannot win? Dr. Wright spoke. For the first time since entering the chamber. Council Leader, your races have achieved great things through optimization and specialization. But specialization creates weakness as well as strength. Explain. Dr. Wright activated a small device. That projected a hologram above the platform. It showed images of Earth, but not the cities and technology they had seen before. Instead, it showed humans in extreme environments, climbing mountains, surviving in deserts, exploring frozen wastelands, living in jungles. Humans evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day, Wright continued. We survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, droughts, floods, and predators larger and stronger than ourselves. We did not survive by being the strongest or the smartest. We survived by being adaptable. Adaptability is inefficient, Advisor Cree stated. Specialization produces superior results. In stable environments, yes, Wright agreed. But survival is rarely about stable environments. It is about dealing with the unexpected, the chaotic, the impossible. Council Leader Vex was quiet for a long moment. Jake could see him thinking, calculating, trying to find the trap in humanity's proposal. Finally, he spoke. Very well. The Galactic Council accepts your challenge. We will select a world suitable for this contest. Each race will choose 3 representatives. The contest will last 30 standard days. We accept these terms, Lisa said immediately. You will regret this arrogance, Commander Thane declared. The Corvan Empire has never lost a contest of strength, and the Zephyrian Republic has never been defeated in any logical competition. Advisor Cree added, Essence Flux simply pulsed brighter. The ethereal collective transcends such physical limitations. Council Leader Vex gestured to his advisors. The world-designated Kepler-442c will serve as our testing ground. It possesses extreme weather patterns, dangerous native life forms, and limited resources. 3 representatives from each race will be transported there with identical basic supplies. The contest begins in 5 standard days. As the human delegation was escorted back to their ship, Jake could hear alien voices throughout the station. Some were betting on how quickly the humans would die. Others were discussing the strange behavior of the new species, but a few voices were asking different questions. Why would a primitive race propose a contest they seemed certain to lose? What did the humans know that the Council did not? Back aboard the Unity, Jake gathered his crew in the briefing room. Signal Earth, he commanded. Tell them the Council accepted our proposal. And get me Captain Foster, Dr. Wright, and Lieutenant Chris Adams on a secure channel. Lisa looked at him with concern. Are you sure about the team selection? Jake nodded. Foster knows more about survival than anyone alive. Wright understands the alien psychology. And Adams is the best engineer we have. If anyone can make this work, it is them. And if they cannot? Commander Webb asked of Jake looked out at the stars surrounding them. Somewhere among those lights was a world where humanity's future would be decided. Then we will have shown the galaxy that humans do not surrender easily. Sometimes that is enough. The Unity turned toward home, carrying news that would change everything. In 5 days, 3 humans would face off against the galaxy's most advanced species in a contest that would determine the fate of their entire world. Jake just hoped their crazy plan would actually work. Kepler 442c hung in space like a green and brown marble streaked with white clouds. From orbit, it looked almost peaceful, but Jake knew better. The planet's data files told a different story. Temperatures that swung from freezing to scorching. Within hours, storms that could level forests, and predators that had evolved to hunt in the most extreme conditions. The Council's transport ship was massive, easily 10 times the size of the Unity. Jake stood in the observation deck watching as 4 smaller craft prepared to launch toward the planet's surface. Each craft would carry 1 team to a different region of the testing ground. Captain Danny Foster stood beside him, checking his gear one more time. The older soldier looked calm, but Jake could see the focus in his eyes. Foster had volunteered for this mission knowing he might not come back. "Remember what we discussed," Jake said quietly. "This is not about winning a contest. This is about showing them who we really are." Foster nodded. "Understood, Admiral. We will make humanity proud." Dr. Amy Johnson finished packing her scientific equipment. She was a small woman with steady hands and sharp eyes, one of Earth's best survival experts. Her specialty was finding food and medicine in hostile environments. "The plant life scans show similarities to several Earth ecosystems," she reported. "I should be able to identify edible vegetation and potential toxins fairly quickly." Lieutenant Chris Adams secured his engineering kit in a waterproof case. He was younger than the other 2, but Jake had seen his work. Adams could build almost anything from basic materials, and his wilderness training made him perfect for this mission. "The gravity is slightly higher than Earth normal," Adams said. "We will tire faster, but we should adapt within a few days." Through the viewing window, Jake could see the other teams preparing in their own sections of the ship. The Corvin warriors were massive creatures, each one nearly 7 feet tall and covered in natural armor plating. They moved with mechanical precision, checking weapons and battle gear. The Zephyrian team consisted of 3 beings similar to Advisor Kree, but with additional cybernetic implants visible on their blue skin. Lights blinked along their arms and necks, probably enhanced sensors and communication devices. The ethereal team was hardest to observe. The 3 energy beings seemed to phase in and out of visibility, sometimes appearing solid and sometimes becoming almost transparent. Jake wondered how beings made of living energy would handle a physical survival challenge. Council Leader Vex appeared on the ship's communication system. "Teams will be deployed at dawn on the planet's primary continent. Each team will be equipped with identical supplies, basic shelter material, water purification tablets, emergency medical kit, and communication beacon for extraction. Use of the beacon results in immediate disqualification. The contest area spans 200 square kilometers of varied terrain," Advisor Kree added. "Teams may encounter each other, but direct violence between contestants is forbidden." Victory. Conditions are simple. Be the last team with all members alive and functional after 30 standard days. Commander Thane's voice boomed through the speakers. "The Corvin Empire will demonstrate the superiority of disciplined warriors over chaotic primitives." Jake looked at his 3 team members. They were not the strongest or the most advanced, but they had something the aliens had lost over thousands of years of evolution. They remembered what it meant to be human. The landing craft separated from the main ship as the planet's sun rose over the horizon. Jake watched from the observation deck as 4 trails of fire streaked toward the surface, carrying the teams to their starting positions. Foster's team landed in what the scans showed as a temperate forest region near a river. The Corvin team was deployed in mountainous terrain that would suit their combat training. The Zephyrians were placed in a desert area where their technological advantages could be fully utilized. The Ethereals were sent to a coastal region with caves and minimal weather protection. The viewing screens in the observation lounge showed feeds from cameras deployed across the testing area. Jake and the other council members could watch the teams but could not communicate with them or interfere in any way. The Corvin team moved immediately after landing. The three warriors established a defensive perimeter and began scouting for threats. Within hours, they had located and killed one of the planet's large predators, a creature that looked like a cross between a bear and a lizard. They butchered the animal efficiently and set up a secure camp. "Impressive," Commander Thane commented from his viewing area. "Corvin warriors do not waste time with unnecessary activities." The Zephyrian team took a completely different approach. They spent their first day scanning the environment and calculating optimal resource allocation. Their cybernetic implants allowed them to map the entire desert region and identify the most efficient locations for water and shelter. By evening, they had constructed a mathematically perfect camp with precise measurements for everything. Logic and efficiency triumph over chaos, Advisor Kree observed with satisfaction. The ethereal team seemed to barely interact with their physical environment at all. They found a large cave and entered what appeared to be a meditative state. Energy patterns flowed between them, but they made no attempt to gather food or improve their shelter. "The physical world is temporary," Essence Flux explained. "We sustain ourselves through spiritual unity and transcendent focus." Then the cameras switched to the human team, and Jake felt his heart sink. Instead of immediately securing their position or setting up defenses, Foster, Johnson, and Adams were doing something completely different. Dr. Johnson was on her hands and knees examining plants and soil samples. She collected leaves, seeds, and bark from dozens of different species, carefully organizing them into categories. Lieutenant Adams was gathering rocks and fallen branches, but not for shelter construction. He seemed to be studying their properties and testing their strength. Most concerning of all, Captain Foster was not establishing a defensive position. Instead, he was sitting quietly near the river, watching and listening to the environment around him. He appeared to be doing nothing at all. "What are they doing?" President Rodriguez asked through the communication link from Earth. Jake watched his team with growing worry. The other teams were making obvious progress toward survival goals, but the humans looked like they were wasting precious time on useless activities. "I do not understand their strategy," Council Leader Vex said. "They appeared to be collecting random objects rather than securing basic survival needs." By the end of the first day, the contrast was clear. The Corvins had food, weapons, and a fortified position. The Zephyrians had optimal shelter and calculated resource distribution. The Ethereals needed little beyond their meditation. The humans had a pile of plants, rocks, and sticks. Jake began to wonder if their plan had been a terrible mistake. The other teams were following logical survival procedures while his people seemed to be playing in the dirt like children. But as night fell on Kepler 442c, Jake noticed something the other observers had missed. Dr. Johnson was not randomly collecting plants. She was systematically cataloging the entire ecosystem around their camp. Adams was not gathering random materials. He was testing every available resource for potential tools and construction materials, and Foster was not doing nothing. He was learning the planet itself, understanding its rhythms and patterns in ways that no scan or calculation could provide. Day 1 analysis, Advisor Kree announced to the observation deck. Corvin team has achieved optimal defensive positioning. Zephyrian team has maximized resource efficiency. Ethereal team has transcended physical limitations. And the human team? Council Leader Vex asked. There was a pause as Kree consulted his displays. The human team appears to be engaged in primitive information gathering. Their behavior patterns do not match any known survival protocols. Jake smiled for the first time since the contest began. The aliens were already making their first mistake. They were trying to understand human behavior using alien logic. 29. More days to go, and the real test was just beginning. By day 7, the patterns Jake had hoped to see were starting to emerge. He stood in the observation lounge watching the multiple camera feeds from the planet's surface, and for the first time since the contest began, he felt cautiously optimistic. Corvin team had run into their first major problem. The three warriors had established dominance over their territory by killing every large predator they encountered, but this had created an unexpected consequence. Without natural predators to keep them in check, smaller scavenger animals had multiplied rapidly and were now swarming the Corvin camp in huge numbers. The warriors are spending most of their energy fighting off pests instead of focusing on survival, Dr. Wright observed from her station. Their aggressive approach disrupted the local ecosystem. More concerning for the Corvins was their social structure. Commander Rex, their team leader, had been making all decisions based on military hierarchy. But when he was injured during a rock slide on day 5, the other two warriors began fighting over who should lead. Their rigid command structure had no provision for democratic decision-making. Corvin efficiency is breaking down, Jake noted. They cannot adapt when their system fails. The Zephyrian team faced a different problem. Their cybernetic implants had been designed for optimal performance in controlled environments, but Kepler 442c was anything but controlled. The planet's magnetic field fluctuated wildly due to its unstable core, and these fluctuations were interfering with their technology. On day 8, team member Zix7 suffered a complete system failure when his implants overloaded during a magnetic storm. His teammates tried to repair him using logical troubleshooting procedures, but they had become so dependent on their technology that they could barely function without it. Their enhancement has become their weakness, Advisor Kree admitted reluctantly. Without technological support, Zephyrian efficiency drops to unacceptable levels. The ethereal team had perhaps the strangest problem of all. Their meditative state allowed them to transcend many physical needs, but it also made them unaware of changes in their environment. They had not noticed that their cave was slowly filling with toxic gas from underground vents. By day 10, 2 of the 3 ethereals had become so focused on their spiritual transcendence that they barely responded to external stimuli. The third member, Flux Prime, was trying to maintain awareness of both the physical and spiritual realms, but the strain was clearly affecting its stability. Transcendence without awareness leads to disconnection from reality, Essence Flux observed, with what might have been concern. Perhaps perfect spiritual evolution has limitations. Meanwhile, the human team was thriving in ways that confounded all the alien observers. Dr. Johnson's systematic study of the local ecosystem had paid off in unexpected ways. She had not only identified safe food sources, but had discovered which plants could be used for medicine, which could repel insects, and which could be processed into useful materials. When Lieutenant Adams had fallen ill from drinking contaminated water on day 6, Johnson had been able to treat him with a combination of local plants that worked better than their emergency medical supplies. The illness that should have crippled their team had instead led to valuable knowledge about the planet's natural pharmacy. Adams had used his engineering skills in ways the aliens found puzzling. Instead of building one large shelter, he had constructed multiple smaller ones connected by covered walkways. When a violent storm hit on day 9, the human camp survived with minimal damage while the more sophisticated shelters, built by other teams, suffered significant harm. His design is inefficient and uses more materials, Advisor Cree complained. It violates basic engineering principles. But it works, Dr. Wright pointed out. Redundancy and flexibility over optimization. Captain Foster's role was the most confusing to the alien observers. He spent much of his time simply sitting and watching, apparently doing nothing productive. But Jake could see what the aliens missed. Foster was learning to read the planet like a book. He could predict weather changes hours before they happened. He knew when predators were nearby by subtle changes in the behavior of smaller animals. He had become part of the ecosystem rather than trying to dominate it. On day 12, Foster's approach proved its value. He detected signs of an approaching, massive storm system that none of the other teams noticed. The humans had time to secure their camp and gather extra supplies. While the other teams were caught unprepared, the storm lasted 3 days and changed everything. The Corvan warriors, already weakened by internal fighting, lost most of their equipment when their shelter collapsed. The Zephyrian team suffered additional technology failures, leaving them nearly helpless. The ethereal cave flooded, forcing them out of their meditative state and into an unfamiliar physical reality. The human team not only survived the storm but used it to their advantage. Adams had designed their shelters to collect rainwater, giving them more fresh water than they had started with. Johnson used the storm as an opportunity to gather plants and materials that were normally out of reach. Foster guided them to higher ground that provided better protection and access to new resources. "I do not understand," Council Leader Vex said on day 15. "By all logical measures, the human team should be the weakest. They have inferior technology, limited physical capabilities, and no apparent specialization. Yet they continue to thrive while the superior teams struggle." Jake exchanged glances with Dr. Wright. "Maybe that is exactly the point, Council Leader. Maybe what you call inferior is actually superior for this environment. Explain." Dr. Wright activated her analysis displays. "Each of your races has evolved toward perfection in specific areas. The Corvans perfected warfare and hierarchy. The Zephyrians perfected logic and efficiency. The Ethereals perfected spiritual transcendence. But perfection in one area often means weakness in others. And humans? Humans never perfected anything," Wright said with a smile. "We remain generalists. We can fight when we need to, think logically when it helps, and find spiritual meaning when it matters. But most importantly, we can change our approach when the situation demands it." On day 8, the true test came. The remaining members of all teams encountered each other near a freshwater spring that had become crucial as other water sources dried up in the aftermath of the storm. The Corvan warrior who was still mobile moved to claim the spring by force. The Zephyrians calculated that they had the strongest claim based on proximity. The Ethereals simply ignored the others and tried to meditate beside the water. The humans did something no one expected. Instead of competing for the resource, Foster approached the other teams and began organizing a sharing system. He suggested rotation schedules, conservation methods, and cooperative security measures. "This is illogical," the Zephyrian team leader protested. "Cooperation reduces individual advantage. Individual advantage is meaningless if everyone dies." Foster replied calmly. What happened next stunned the alien observers. The human team began caring for members of the other teams who had been injured or were suffering from equipment failures. Dr. Johnson treated the Corvan warrior's injuries using her botanical medicines. Adams helped repair some of the Zephyrian technology using improvised materials. Foster even guided the confused Ethereals to a better meditation spot that was safer from environmental hazards. Why are they helping their competitors? Commander Thane demanded. This gives them no tactical advantage. Jake watched the feeds with growing pride, because that is what humans do. When survival is at stake, we help each other, even when it would be easier not to. By day 20, the dynamics on the planet had completely changed. The surviving contestants were no longer competing against each other. They were working together under human leadership to survive the increasingly hostile environment. The humans had not won through superior strength or technology. They had won by remembering something the advanced races had forgotten. Sometimes the best way to survive is to help others survive too. Council. Leader Vex stared at the displays for a long time without speaking. Finally, he turned to Jake. Admiral Harrison, I believe we are beginning to understand what you meant by humanity's hidden weapon. Day 25 brought a crisis that would have destroyed any normal survival group. A massive earthquake shook the testing area, triggering landslides and opening new volcanic vents that filled the air with poisonous gases. The carefully planned camps of all teams were either destroyed or made uninhabitable. Jake watched the camera feeds with his heart in his throat as the ground shook and trees fell around the contestants. This was beyond anything they had prepared for, a true test of survival skills in the face of catastrophe. The remaining Corvan warrior, Commander Gex, was trapped under fallen rocks and badly injured. The two functional Zephyrians had lost all their remaining technology in the quake and were essentially helpless without their cybernetic support systems. The ethereal beings were in complete shock, their meditative state shattered by the physical trauma of the disaster. This changes everything, President Rodriguez said through the communication link from Earth. No one could survive this. But Jake kept watching because he knew his people better than that. The camera focused on the human team as they emerged from their damaged shelter. Foster quickly assessed the situation while Adams checked their equipment and Johnson gathered the medical supplies that had survived. Then they did something that made Jake's chest swell with pride. Instead of focusing on their own survival, the three humans immediately began searching for the other contestants. They could have used the disaster as an opportunity to eliminate their competition by simply leaving the aliens to die. Instead, they risked their own lives to help. Foster and Adams worked for hours to dig Commander Gex out from under the rocks. The Corvan warrior was unconscious and bleeding from multiple wounds. Dr. Johnson used every bit of medical knowledge she had to stabilize his injuries, sharing their precious medical supplies without hesitation. Inefficient allocation of resources, Advisor Cree observed, but his voice lacked its usual certainty. The two surviving Zephyrians were found wandering in circles, completely lost without their technological aids. Their cybernetic implants had been damaged beyond repair, leaving them unable to process basic survival decisions. Adams spent an entire day teaching them how to build simple tools and start fires using primitive methods. Why waste time on failed competitors? Commander Thane asked, though he sounded more confused than angry. The ethereal beings were discovered huddled in a cave, their energy forms flickering weakly as they struggled to maintain physical coherence after the traumatic shock. Foster sat with them for hours, talking quietly and helping them reconnect with the physical world around them. The humans are sacrificing their own advantage, Council Leader Vex stated. This behavior serves no logical purpose. Unless survival itself is not the real purpose, Dr. Wright suggested quietly. By day 28, the situation on the planet had become something unprecedented in the history of council contests. All surviving members of all teams were living and working together in a combined camp under human coordination. The humans had effectively become the leaders of a mixed species survival community. Dr. Johnson had organized a medical station where She treated injuries and illnesses for all species using her knowledge of local plants and basic medicine. Lieutenant Adams had designed and built shelters that accommodated the different physical needs of each race. Captain Foster had established security procedures, food gathering schedules, and work assignments that utilized each individual's remaining strengths. They have created a functional multi-species society in less than 30 days. Essence Flux observed, its voice filled with something that might have been wonder. How is this possible? Jake smiled as he watched the feeds. Because humans have been doing this for thousands of years. We have always survived by working together, by finding ways to include others instead of excluding them. On day 30, the final day of the contest, something extraordinary happened. The extraction beacon that each team carried for emergency evacuation was activated, but not by any individual team. Instead, all the surviving contestants activated their beacons simultaneously in a coordinated signal that meant only one thing. They refused to continue competing against each other. The contest parameters have been violated, Advisor Cree announced. All teams have forfeited by requesting extraction. No. Foster's voice came through the communication system as the rescue ships approached the planet. We have not forfeited. We have won. The rescue operation brought all survivors back to the Council Station, but the aftermath was unlike any previous contest. Instead of separated groups of defeated aliens and victorious humans, they found integrated teams working together to help the injured and share resources. Commander Gex, still bandaged from his injuries, stood beside Foster and spoke to the assembled council. The human team saved my life when they could have left me to die. They shared their medicine when their own supplies were limited. They showed me something I had forgotten existed. The Zephyrian survivors, learning to function without their technological crutches, had discovered abilities they never knew they possessed. Logical analysis suggested we should have died without our implants, one of them reported. The humans taught us that logic alone is insufficient for survival. The ethereal beings, their energy forms now stable and grounded in physical reality, spoke of transcendence through connection rather than isolation. We achieved higher consciousness by engaging with others, not by withdrawing from them. Council Leader Vex stood before the assembled beings, his metallic face showing an expression Jake had never seen before, uncertainty. The contest was designed to test survival skills. The human team demonstrated superior adaptation and resource management. By these measures, they have won. But the contest revealed something more significant, he continued. Each of our races has evolved beyond certain primitive traits in our pursuit of perfection. We eliminated inefficiency, emotion, and what we considered weakness. We believed this made us superior. Vex gestured toward the mixed group of survivors. The humans showed us that we eliminated essential elements of survival itself. Their inefficiency created redundancy and flexibility. Their emotions enabled cooperation and sacrifice. Their apparent weakness allowed them to help others become stronger. Advisor Cree stepped forward. The Zephyrian Republic requests permission to study human social structures and decision-making processes. Our logical optimization has created vulnerabilities we did not recognize. Commander Thane removed his helmet, revealing a scarred but thoughtful face. The Corvin Empire would benefit from understanding human leadership methods. Our hierarchy proved brittle under unexpected stress. Essence Flux's energy form pulsed with new patterns. The ethereal collective seeks to learn balance between transcendence and engagement. Isolation is not evolution. Jake looked around the chamber at hundreds of alien faces, all focused on the small group of humans who had changed everything simply by being themselves. Council Leader Vex, humanity accepts your offer of independence and council membership. But we would like to propose something additional. Speak. Let us share what we have learned about survival, cooperation, and adaptation, not as conquerors or teachers, but as partners. Every species here has knowledge and abilities that could benefit all others. Together, we could create something stronger than any of us could achieve alone. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, the Council expanded not through conquest or submission, but through mutual recognition of shared strength. As the Unity prepared to return to Earth with news of humanity's victory, Jake stood on the observation deck looking out at the stars. They no longer seemed cold and distant, but full of possibility and new friendships. Dr. Wright joined him at the window. So what was humanity's hidden weapon, Admiral? Jake smiled. Our humanity itself, Doctor. Our refusal to sacrifice who we are for what we might become. We won by remaining human when everyone else had evolved beyond it. The message sent to Earth was simple. Humanity had found its place among the stars not by becoming something greater than human, but by showing the galaxy what being human really meant. And for the first time in galactic history, other species wanted to learn how to be a little more human too.